what I found is that now that art has become such a big part of my life, whenever I'm facing a big business problem, most of the solutions come in my art studio. And I'm not thinking about it. Sometimes you're just having these meetings and trying to brainstorm and trying to come up with solutions, and nothing really clicks. And then you just put your brain down and you just start painting and doing something that's really creative, and an idea is going to start sparking up, because the problem, you always have it in the back of your mind. Right? And as you're just drawing and figuring it out and mixing colors or doing whatever, sometimes that's when the best idea of the solution of the problem comes up.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wednesdays Off podcast. Today, my guest is Francisco Prado. He is an Salvadorian artist who primarily paints to help bring awareness and prevent violence towards women. He works in acrylic. He also has a long history as an entrepreneur. You can follow him on Instagram at ttprado.art, and you're going to learn a lot more about him today. Francisco, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Stavros. Glad to be here. Happy to join and happy to share some of my experience and some of my passion.
I appreciate it. You and I met in Cancun. We were both doing something called Global Speakers Academy, which is part of Entrepreneurs organization. We were both learning to be better public speakers. So I'd love to know, what is it you want to speak about? Why is it so important to you?
Well, my art is really important to me because I grew up in a world where violence against women was the norm. I live in El Salvador. I grew up in El Salvador, and this is a very chauvinistic society, and I've experienced a lot of abuse against women, not firsthand, but throughout my life. I have 2 daughters, and for me, that's not okay. So I started painting during the pandemic out of desperation, so finding something to do.
Well, so
my business are permanent.
The painting behind you is yours, yes?
Yeah, this is meant to empower women. So if you see, it's Catwoman in weird colors, and this is just to give a sense of how each woman, I think, has a superhero inside of them, and how they have this power to overcome anything. And so it's part of me trying to send a message of how powerful women can be. Some have just forgotten about it. And
so when you said you just started painting during the pandemic, you don't mean the first time you put pen to paper or the first time you put acrylic. Those are beautiful, beautiful paintings.
Thank you very much. It is, actually. It is. I mean, I always had a knack for drawing ever since I was a kid. I mean, and like most entrepreneurs, I have a little case of ADHD.
Yeah.
So I don't know about you, but when I was in school, I was sort of paying attention one year and doing something else with the rest of my attention span. And I found out that if I doodled in my notepads, I could pay attention a little bit more to class. So if you see my notebooks from when I was a kid, there's cartoons all over the place, and a lot of eyes and a lot of mouth, a lot of women's eyes and mouth. My mom was an artist, so she could paint really, really well. And I found out at an early age that I had the ability to draw. But again, growing up in a place where men rule and women have to follow, my dad thought that art was for women and for bohemians. And he didn't see that as a path that I should be taking. He would do anything he could to dissuade me from pursuing anything that was arty. I studied engineering in college, which is a completely different side of the brain, right? It's logic and processes, and 2 + 2 is 4, and there's no room for any creative thinking.
It's a different kind of creative, right? It's a different kind of problem solving.
Well, it's problem solving using logic and using processes, and it really makes you think in a certain way. And I became a very, very logical and structured person. So most of the businesses, were structured and logical. Everything had to have a plan, and everything had to have structure, and everything had to have, your budget was compared to the budget, and you saw where you didn't need it and why. And for business, it's great, but for your creativity and for your development, not so much, because you become very, very rigid. So in the pandemic, my primary business during the pandemic was a software company. I still have it, actually, the software company. So we're a software factory, actually. So we develop software for businesses. Again, a very structured, you have to go through,
design specifications, collect the requirements,
Yeah.
very process oriented.
Scrum process, and you have to have your scrimmages, and you have to have your code, and it has to do A plus B equals C, right? And during the pandemic, we were basically shut down. I mean, the businesses went to 50% of its rate.
Mhm.
Some businesses kept using software, but most of them were just locked down. In El Salvador, you couldn't really get out of your four walls. We couldn't go outside to walk around. We couldn't drive around. We couldn't go to a park. We had to stay home. And the only way you could leave was if you had a special permission, because you were either in the food industry or in the first need industry. It's just going. I mean, again, the ADHD, right? I was going insane. I mean, I was crawling up the walls. So I was, trying to figure out what to do and how to keep myself busy. And a friend of mine that he knew that I could draw. I mean, the drawing part, even as I got older, like if I would take a phone call or if I would take a Zoom call, I would always be doodling on the side. So he saw that, and he's an artist, and he used to come, you'd be a very good artist. And I kept saying, well, not really for me. My training had not been, it was working against me. And, in the pandemic, he called me and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm going insane." And he said, "Well, I'm going to send over some acrylic paints, and I'm going to send over a canvas and figure it out." So he sent it over, and this was 2020, and figured it out, I guess. So now I mean, I don't spend as much time doing art as I would like, but I do try to make enough space so that my art, evolves and it's a significant part of my life, and hopefully it's a significant part of those women that I'm trying to help.
I feel like part of me would love to take on an artistic endeavor in a very meaningful way, and I've always not made room in my life for that. So I studied creativity, and it was what I have my master's degree in, and so these words are really interesting to me: art, creative, problem solving. Like they all overlap, but they mean fundamentally different things. And like you, my training is to be very process oriented, very structural. In my life, I bring a lot of logic to life. So when I have these daydreams of kind of locking myself in a studio and just kind of doing art, I think the most appealing thing to me is the lack of a process, the entire freedom to just decide to turn left or do something different and just see what it has. I imagine things like creating a whole universe that you would write a novel around, but just kind of really digging into each character and what do they do and what happened to them immediately before, or something like that. But I'd love to make more space for art and to be artistic in my life, to be processless in my life.
What I've found is that now that art has become such a big part of my life, whenever I'm facing a big business problem, most of the solutions come in my art studio.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not thinking about it. Sometimes you're just having these meetings and trying to brainstorm and trying to come up with solutions, and nothing really clicks. And then you just shut your brain down and you just start painting and doing something that's really creative. And an idea is going to start sparking up, because the problem, you always have it in the back of your mind, right? And as you're just drawing and figuring it out and mixing colors or doing whatever, sometimes that's when the best idea of the solution of the problem comes up. And it's really interesting. My team already knows this, right? So they give me enough space for me to go and work on my art, because they think that they figure out that I'm going to come up with a better solution if I have my creative breaks every once in a while.
So I wonder if, we've talked about kind of identifying lies that entrepreneurs tell themselves that kind of keep them trapped and keep them from having a more fulfilling life. So maybe there's a lie in there that we tell ourselves around productive time versus time for just letting our brains wander and letting our brains do something. And art is a great medium for that.
We're trained. I think we train ourselves when we start the business that we have to spend as much time as possible in the business. And if you don't spend time in the business, then you're not really going to make it move forward. I had several businesses, and some of them have failed and some have done really, really well. And I found that sometimes it's not about the amount of time that you spend in the business, it's about how much you really invested into the business and how much you really enjoy what you're doing. If you enjoy what you're doing, you're not gonna mind spending a couple of more hours there. But oftentimes I see entrepreneurs and you visit them I remember when I was in the membership chair for EO, and I used to go visit them, and sometimes they were playing Sudoku or they were playing freestyle in their office. What are you doing? What are you doing there? No, because I have to be here in case something happens, right? But you really don't have to be there all the time. And the pandemic actually gave us that, right? I mean, it made Zoom calls and podcasts like this one possible. Before you would never think that this is the medium that we communicate. And I think at least for the Gen Xers like us, freed our mind. So for me, the big lesson was to freed my time, to make it okay not to spend, 10 hours a day in the office sitting down in your desk. You can actually run the business and be at the studio, or you can run the business and be somewhere else. Nothing's going to happen. The world's not going to fall down. The business is not going to. And it's really interesting because it gives you freedom to do more things, whether it's another business or it's just, things that you need to do for yourself.
I think two things jump out at me there. One is the phase of the business. So when it's very, very early and it's a startup, you may need to be more available than if it's mature and you have all the right teams and people in place and those kinds of things. But also the discipline that's required to create that space, because there's never going to be a lack of demand for your time and your attention from your business, from everything, right? Everything in the world is demanding time and attention from you. So partially it's also about having the discipline to create that space and say, yeah, I know there's a million things I could be doing right now, but the thing I want to be doing right now is in my studio. And so I'm going to go and do it. And I'm going to give myself permission to do it, as opposed to seeing that as unproductive. That's not unproductive. I mean, I don't know. There's something here that there's these connotations people have around art where they're like, that's unproductive. Yes, it's pretty, but it's unproductive. But I think those are just connotations at the end of the world. I don't think they're real.
I used to think that art was unproductive. That's why one of the biggest pushbacks that I had from me doing art was, well, I'll have time to be doing this, even if I could. And I didn't know if I had the skills to do it, actually. But the pandemic changed it, right? I mean, you couldn't work more, not because you didn't want to. It's just, I mean, my business was just stopped. And there was physically, I couldn't do anything
right
to make it more demanding, right? So we did have, some meetings about, we can develop software to do this or do that. But then once the meeting was over, I mean, if I was not actually coding, then the meeting was over and I couldn't go and visit clients, which is what I did most of the time, or do the PR with, the Chamber of Commerce or do a keynote or so everything that had to do with my business.
Interesting.
Put on hold, right? Just waiting for it to happen, to get over. So those, I had a lot of free time on my hand and I physically couldn't run the business.
Yeah.
And I couldn't spend more time in the business because the business was not there anymore. So yeah, it was just a great outlet of something that I could do from home at the time when I couldn't leave. And then it just stuck with me. And it actually became something that I understood that it was not productive in the sense of the business, but it was productive in the sense of me, right? And it would get me in a better mindset whenever I did have the business meetings. Because before I started doing art in the pandemic, I mean, I was in an extremely bad mood, right? So you feel that you're not going to get out of it, right? And so, how are we going to make payroll if money's not coming in? How are we going to survive this if we don't have an end in sight, right? How do we have to fire people and who do we fire? Why would we choose, Ann over Joe? If they're both doing a good job and they're both great. So how do we choose between them? Because we need the business to survive this. And then how do you manage something that's unmanageable because it's out of your control? So whenever we used to have the meetings, you're obviously not in a good place, right? To make decisions because you feel this weight on your shoulder, and every entrepreneur that went through the pandemic felt it, right? Unless the pandemic helped your business, which is very few businesses.
That was my situation.
Well, lucky you.
It was interesting though, because it's hard to say that it helped our business, because what happened is we ran in-person, highly interactive events for scientists. This was our business. And so you would think that the pandemic would kill our business because the number of highly interactive in-person events for scientists pretty much went to zero overnight. But on January 1st, 2020, we launched a virtual product. a virtual interactive meeting platform that we did not expect for people to have a lot of adoption. We were like, we want to do this. We think this is good, but we really think we're going to have to push hard. We thought maybe it might be 5 to 10% of our business that year. And it ended up being 100% of our business. So what actually happened for me during the pandemic is our old business died while we had to build a brand new business. You know what I mean? On its
Right. Yeah.
we had like 2 people trained. We were not prepared for that level of scale. And so the pandemic ultimately burned me out because I was working 80 hours a week for 2 years straight. Wow. You know what I mean? Like trying to build this new business on top of the old one.
I don't know if I would have preferred that to what happened to me, because at the beginning of the pandemic, it was just, we were used to, I used to come to the office at 7 a.m. and I would leave here, maybe 6, 7 p.m. every day. And I had back-to-back meetings, and we had clients from all the way from Guatemala all the way to Colombia. And so we were either in a client meeting trying to figure out the next steps for their software, or we were doing some PR with existing clients that needed a little help figure things out, or I was in meetings about how we were implementing with some project with other clients. And then all the clients that were in the middle of an implementation basically stopped, right? All the clients that had like businesses that were pandemic prone, like, dev distribution or medical supplies and stuff like that. We had to keep, giving them support and stuff like that, but they were like 10% of our business. And then everybody else, like all the retail clients,
they didn't have any customers.
Yeah, they didn't have any customers. So they said, we need to shut down. So we developed an e-commerce for them, right, during the pandemic, and we just started putting e-commerce on all our retail clients, trying to get some revenue to maintain the business. But basically, it was just from all the moving parts that we were used to, they got cut down to like maybe 20%, right? So it was like, okay, so what do we do now? What do we do next? We can't sell. People don't have money. They're not spending. So it was just, we have to wait this out. And just the frustration of not knowing how to move, because as an entrepreneur, I was used to always trying to pivot. This is not working, you pivot to here, and then you try this, and then if this doesn't work, then you pivot here, and this doesn't work, and then you figure it out. But during the pandemic, we were just constrained, right? We couldn't really pivot that much. So we had offices in Panama, and we had offices in El Salvador, and pre-pandemic, I used to travel every 3 weeks. I used to travel for a week to Panama, and then go take care of the office there and, people there and whatnot. And then it just became all virtual, right? So we started saying, hey, you know what? We're spending over $250,000 a year in travel, and we can actually do this virtual even once the pandemic is over, right? So started getting all this lessons about you can run the business differently and can free up some of your time to do some other things. And the person that was the saddest when the pandemic was over, I think it was my wife. She was used to me being at home 24/7, and then I had to leave. And I know a lot of marriages suffered during the pandemic. For us, it was a time to just reconnect, right? Yeah. And once I started traveling again and doing again and going to the office again, so it's just like, well, where are you going? And when I'm going to see you again? Yeah, she was so used to having you. She just didn't want me to leave. Like, so it became interesting. Just how the pandemic started changing all these mindsets and the lies that we would tell ourselves. Right? I have to be present, otherwise things won't happen. I have to go to the office for so many hours, otherwise people will not work as efficient. People have to come into the office, otherwise they won't grow, and they won't think, and the culture is not going to be created as I had planned. I had read all these books about working smart and not working hard, or the difference between working hard and working smart. I thought I was a smart guy and I was working smart, but then during the pandemic, a lot of the stupid decisions that you make came to light.
Sounds like the lockdowns gave you 3 gifts: the gift to have time to reconnect with your wife, right? To really kind of say, hey, I'm back home, and really have that connection. Yeah. The gift to find space for art, and this whole passion you've developed around preventing violence towards women and reconnecting with a talent and a gift that you have that you're able to now bring to the world, and also the gift of figuring out how to run your business more efficiently. Because, like you said, I don't have to travel. I don't have to spend $250,000 to get here or there. And a lot of these things can just turn into some virtual meetings. It's funny how in life, things that are setbacks ultimately end up being trampolines or launching pads. Not always, but many of the time.
Yeah. It is. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine, for example, not doing art now.
Yeah.
It's just part of my routine and my life and and makes you appreciate a lot of things that you didn't appreciate before. I mean, I've always enjoyed art, but now I see it with a lot more care, if that makes sense. So if I travel to New York, I make sure to go to the Met, and I make sure to go to the MoMA Museum, and just seeing works of art of other artists just inspire you. And before, that was not in my agenda. If I happened to see a museum, I would probably go in, but it was not part of my, we need to go see this. It just trickled down to like my kids and my wife and everybody that's around me, right? So now everybody's talking to me about art in a way that they weren't talking to me about art before.
Do you ever meet entrepreneurs who are kind of artists on the side, or closet, like the gift that other fellow artist did for you, where he sent you the canvas? Do you ever meet people who are in that same spot?
You know what? I think not only entrepreneurs, but I think everybody has a hidden artist in them. And in our class with Cancun, that's basically at the end when I was refining my speech after Cancun. That's the one big takeaway that I want people to have from whenever they hear me speak. What is that discarded talent that you have that you thought was not useful, but it's actually the one that is going to help you change the world? Are you an artist? Are you a painter? Are you a poet? Are you a writer? Are you a musician? And I think everybody has a hidden talent that they haven't developed. And entrepreneurs, we usually push that one down because business is so important and making money is so important that we don't have time for anything else. But then we do have time for Netflix, and we do have time for Candy Crush, and we do have time for, reading books maybe. And we don't have time to develop this creative side that's actually going to make us a better entrepreneurs and a more wholesome person, right?
Yeah, better people, happier people.
And it's going to give us a lot of joy, right? I mean, maybe it's that you played the saxophone when you were 16 and you stopped, right? Or you played the guitar, or you love music, or you used to sing, or you used to write, or you keep a journal, but you never thought about writing a book. And those things, if you start dedicating time to them, it's amazing how much happier it's going to make you and how much fulfillment is going to come out of you, right? So when I see one of my artworks in someone's home, or someone even just commenting on my website, hey, I need this, I like it, you're so talented and this and that. It's very humbling, because you don't think that you can create something that someone's gonna like, even though you're used to doing it in business, right? I mean, we create software and we know that another businessman is gonna need it, right? Hey, you're gonna need this software to control your inventory, and I know you're gonna need it. And it's something you're sort of creating, but it's not coming from your.
One of them makes me feel like you touch people in a logical way, like you were saying before. Yeah, I have the software; it's useful, it's functional. The other one touches people in their hearts, in their souls, in their, you know what I mean. And so to feel like you affected someone,
stirs emotion. Yeah, it stirs emotions, right? It stirs something in them. It stirs a conversation. The other day I was talking to. Obviously, my forum, all of them have art, my artwork in their houses. But I was talking to one of my first clients in art, if you want to call them that. And so I always tell, from my art, I always have a message of empowerment, right? In this one, for example, this series is all about superheroes. Before it was, women portrayed in a certain light that used to empower them, or the use of colors would mean something about getting out of abusive relationships. My new series is about how when you look at it's sort of an optical illusion. You look at it up close and you're going to see just blobs. And as you look far away, you're going to start seeing a woman. And it's all about how women have this struggle about every decision that they make. So if they decide to, not have kids, then they're judged on it. they decide to not go back to work, they're judging it. They decide to go back to work, they're judging it. It's a struggle that they go through. And if you take that one little piece of decision or information, you're going to see that it's murky, it's not nice. But when you look at the whole thing, what they do, then you're going to see this beautiful picture. And so my new artwork is trying to do that. And so it does have an explanation behind it on my thinking process and how to make this an empowering message for women. And the funny thing is that when people buy the art and you go to their house, they retell the story, right? So not only is it about the proceeds about what I sell that go to a certain organization that's helping abused women, it's also about how this message is getting repeated over and over and over again to everybody that is facing the argument. And it's just so humbling, right? That you could come up with this idea, this creation, and then this has all these legs that keep repeating itself.
I love what you said before. What is the talent that you discarded because you didn't think it was useful, but really that's what will help you change the world? That's a question that I want to pose to the whole audience to just ask themselves, like, yeah, I love that you focus that on your talks. I wonder if we could use that as a segue to go back and maybe tell a little bit of your backstory, because you spent a large part of your life pushing down that talent or ignoring it, or, you know what I mean, just kind of not making time for it. So maybe just tell us about your, how you started and how you came up as an entrepreneur, and go from there.
Well, yeah, my grandfather was the ultimate entrepreneur, right? So he was born in Nicaragua, and he left Nicaragua because as he was growing up and he was starting his businesses, he started his first business when he was 18. When he was 16, he bought an old typewriter, and this was, in the 1930s, right? So he bought an old typewriter in the 1930s. Germany was the big superpower. He used to send all these letters to German companies saying that he was an importer, exporter, and trying to get brands to so he could represent in León, Nicaragua, which is a small little town. And he somehow got some sort of financing. He started a business importing medical supplies, and he was doing well. And then the communist regime came into Nicaragua, and he couldn't buy dollars to pay for whatever he was bringing in. He had to go through the government first, and they would actually give you a set amount of dollars that you could import or you could buy. So it was affecting his business. So he said, I'm not going to let any government or any person dictate how big my business can grow. So he left Nicaragua. He wanted to go to Panama because he saw Panama as a place for growth, but Panama already had a representative for his brands. So they told him, why don't you go to El Salvador? So he came to El Salvador, and that's how he started his business. And then he figured out he's inside truly wanted to become sort of like a creator, like an industrialist. So he sold his medical supply business, and he started doing office furniture and kitchen cabinets. That's how he started back in 1946. So I grew up in a family business dynamics, right? I mean, I was a product of a family business where everything happened around the family business, right? So if the business did well, we had a nice Christmas vacation and went to Disney and, had a nice things and new things. And if the business was not doing well, then,
I did.
They just couldn't do it.
I grew up in a family business as well. So it never occurred to me that you could go work for somebody else, because as far as I was concerned, it was everybody worked in the family business. That's what.
Yeah, everything happened around the family business, right? And so whatever you talked about in the dinner table was about the business. And my dad, he was an old school guy. He had to work hard, and if you work hard, and you got rewards. And for him, again, a very macho society, right? So I was not the eldest sibling, but I was the eldest son. So my sister, she's 1 year older than I am. She was the princess. She didn't have to work. She didn't have to do, she had to be taken care of. And then, when I came around, when I was 8 years old, I was in the American schools. All my classes were in English, and we followed the American school system. So, summer was starting in May, ended up in August, right? So we had those 3 months off, and he was just he was furious that for 3 months I got to, just lay around and read comics and not doing it. So he didn't agree with that. So when I was 8 years old, that was the first time I had to have a summer job. And obviously he was in the business, right? So my first job was building bicycles, that we sold in the stores. And by this time, the family business had evolved to consumer electronics stores. So we sold anything that you need in your house. So it was sort of like a mashup between a Best Buy and a home furniture store.
Okay.
Right. And we sold them on credit, long-term credit. So it's a financial institution hidden like in a retail store. So I had to, my first summer job, I had to go build bicycles. The second summer job was, going to the factory and be part of the assembly line for refrigerators. And, then when I was 12, I had to go to the sales floor and earn my commissions. And by 15, I was already managing stores. By, 18, I was already managing a set of stores, and it happened in every single vacation. And I was always getting paid, right? So my first paycheck was $5 for the whole summer, which is not that much. But if you're 8, you don't know if that's good or bad, right? You just know that you're getting money. And then by the time I went to college, I already knew about retail operations and how businesses worked. And the only thing I knew, Stavros, was whatever happened to me and whatever I did in life, I didn't want to work in the family business. I could do anything I wanted, but I didn't want to work in the family business. I actually wanted to become a doctor or an architect. And my dad said, if you want to do that, I'm not paying for your school. So I had to change plans. And then that's how I came up with engineering. But I grew up in El Salvador during a time where there was a civil war going on. So it was a weird childhood. For me, it was what I knew. But when I look in my life now, it was just I don't understand how we could live the way we did. Right? I mean, we had bombs going off all the time, and the lights would go out every single night. We would have to study with candlelight. Because it was the only way to do it. There was always a risk of getting recruited by the army or by the guerrillas. I was actually recruited by both to figure out a way of getting out of it from both.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like recruitment. It sounds like forced.
It was forced. It was forced. I mean, there was a war that was going on. So if you were above 16 years old, then you were, considered able to fight, right? And so they wanted you in their band. And
how'd you get out?
Everybody, well, with the army, what happened was we were at a Chili's having a hamburger, and it was late at night, and then the army truck came in and they just rounded us up and put us back on the truck and just took us to army headquarters, and they said they shaved our head off and gave us our fatigues and said, "Hey, welcome to the army." And I had an uncle that was in the Air Force at the time. And he had given me a business card from one of the top ranking generals in the army that had a handwritten note saying, this guy, Francisco, is a personal friend of mine. So,
don't send him to the front lines.
Yeah, please take all considerations with him or something like that, right? In the Spanish. So I was trying to pull it out all the time and they wouldn't let me. The soldiers wouldn't let me. And then once they gave us our fatigues and we were in the barracks and everything, I was able to yank it out and just show it to one of the guys there. And he just freaked out. He thought he was going to get court-martialed or something. And he said, "Oh, we're so sorry. So we're going to drive you back to where you were." So I said, "Hey, I had a couple of friends with me." And so I took my friends out as well. And so they drove us back in. But, this happened. Can you imagine? I was 16. We were able to have driver's license when we were 14 because the country was just topsy-turvy. There were no laws. So I had my car at the Chili's and I told my mom, I'm going to go grab a hamburger. I'm going to be right back. This was probably at, 6 p.m. So it was 6. Maybe I was going to be back at around 8. They drove me back at around 11 p.m. at night. And then I had to drive everybody home. And then I got home at around 1 a.m. Had army fatigues on, right? And I can't imagine now when my mom was going through during that, because I don't remember what I was going through. I knew what was happening to me, but can you imagine what she was
Yeah.
going through? I mean, no cell phones, no way of communicating. They didn't let you call home or anything. It was just, your kid is just gone for a while, 4 or 5 hours, and you don't know where they are. So I remember coming home and she was upset at me actually.
Yeah. She was mad.
What happened? And so, what do you want me to do about it? But it was a big risk. I mean, it was a big risk living here, and it was just it was a surreal way of living for teenagers, right? All of us were armed, so we had guns that we carried legitimately with permits, and it was just nobody pulled it out. No, I mean, nobody used to fire at anybody, but it was just for security purposes, I guess. But it was just surreal. I mean, I couldn't imagine my girls growing up in that environment, and for me being okay and feeling safe, and it was just, what we had to do. And it was just what happened, right? Which actually made for very good college essays, if you think about it. I mean,
I imagine they would. Did you go to college in the States or did you go to college?
yeah. I went to college. I went to Notre Dame
Okay.
in Indiana. Yeah, so a big football fan. But yeah, I mean, just said all this, what is the biggest lesson you've ever learned? Well, when I got recruited by the so I guess I got into colleges. I couldn't get in, maybe because of my grades, just because of my stories. And it was just surreal. Business kept going, right? I mean, even in those hardships, businesses grew and businesses failed, and it was a great lesson for your future entrepreneur, right?
That's the
Because
most.
then you think about when you're going through the hardships. And when I was going through the pandemic, I kept saying, well, how did my dad was able to manage a business when bombs were going off every single day, and you have all these armed guards, and they were coming in and they were stealing the till, and you couldn't do anything about it, and businesses kept going.
That's the most amazing part to me as someone who's never experienced war firsthand is that people keep going, like lives keep going. It's not like, I'm imagining this battlefield and everybody else is hiding, right? So, but that's not at all what it's,
No, they actually, in 1989, I was I think I was a sophomore in high school. 1989. It was when there was a big attack, right? So the guerrillas attacked the city, because most of the time, all the fighting was done like in the far sides of the countryside. But the city was, I mean, we used to get bombs and we used to get some threats, but it was usually safe. And then in 1989, there was this big attack on the city, because basically the communist guerrillas wanted to take over the country, right? And they tried to make a push to take over everything. And the first day of the attack, it was a Saturday, and you could just tell, because it was just surreal. I mean, you see all these bombings and things going on, and gunfights in the street right in front of you, right? So everybody just went into hiding, like sort of like in COVID, right? So you couldn't leave home. And after a week, the government sits down with the guerrillas and says, this is not sustainable. We can't keep fighting every day, because businesses have to go on. So they said, all right, I mean, we're going to destroy the country if we're not productive. So I said, okay, so let's fight from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. every day. And they actually made a pact that from 6 a.m. up to 6 p.m., people could go to school, businesses would be open, you could work, everything would be normal, but you had to be home at 6 p.m. Everything was locked down, because they would start fighting again in the street.
that's amazing.
It was just great. It's crazy, All right, well, it's 5, so I have to go home, because if it's 6, then, I have to stay here and sleep here, because otherwise I'm going to get killed in the street.
When did the Civil War end?
1992.
And by that time were you running that same business? What was?
I had just come back. I came back in 95. The war ended in 92. I was in college. When I came back in 95, the war was over, and there was an economic boom in the countries. A lot of businesses were popping up, and the way the war ended was the guerrillas, the communists, actually became a political party in El Salvador.
Okay.
So they joined the democracy, the democratic part of the country, right? And they became a political powerhouse. So I mean, business from 92 up to probably like maybe 2000. It was a startup country, right? I mean, we didn't have a McDonald's or a Burger King. We didn't have big department stores. We didn't have anything because nobody wanted to invest in the country. So whoever had invested before, their business had progressed and grown. But from 92 on, everything just boomed. Everything was just.
Did you get your wish? Did you get to not work in the family business, or?
I did. When I came back, I started working for an airline. It was an MRO company. And then, I figured, my grandfather, he was one of my mentors. I used to have dinner with him all the time. And he said, you're not meant to be working for someone else. I know it's interesting for you because you're looking at your airplanes and your engines and whatnot, but you really, I mean, if you don't want to work in the business, you really have to start your own company. And I said, well, I don't know what I would do. And he said, well, it's the time to start a business is now. So think about what you want to do. Think about an idea you might have and bring it to me. And I'll make sure that you get the resources you need to start it.
I used to teach entrepreneurship at USF, and this was a thing I would tell a lot of my students is you're still in college, but start a business. Don't wait to find the perfect business idea. Don't wait till you find the business that is your calling in life. Don't wait till you find the one that you think is going to make you $1 billion. Just start any business, because as soon as you start something, you'll start learning. And fully expect for it to either fail or for you to sell it or for you to just fully expect that this is not going to be the one business that's going to make you your career, but get started, because if you don't get started, then you're just sitting on the sidelines.
And well, I've been in business for a long, long time. I mean, not officially or, legally, but in college, I used to, cut hair. I used to give Spanish tutoring. I used to, bring stuff from back home and over and sell it. So I was always selling and doing things and trying to get business and trying to get money somehow. Again, I had been working in the family business since I was 8. So I already knew a lot about business. I didn't know finance. I didn't know a lot of things that I know now. I had already had a couple of experiences.
So what was the business that you started?
Well, it was an office superstore. We didn't have any office back home. So in college, I used to go get all my supplies from Office Depot or Staples. And so I said, there's nothing like that here. So why don't we start that? So I started that business. It was, one of the biggest lessons is I used to be this guy up to that point where everything that I did was successful. And when you start your business and you do your first business plan, every single business doesn't work like the business plan. I've never seen a business plan that you started and said, this is how it's going to work, and it works the same way, right? And I couldn't figure, I felt like the biggest failure and the biggest fraud because I couldn't make it work. And it was just, I thought that, I was there, cut the ribbon, and customers were going to get flooding in and buying things, and it didn't happen, right? And then I couldn't figure out why, and it was just so frustrating. I felt like I wasn't doing things right. Then eventually I figured it out, and I actually sold that business. Started a business in 95 and sold it in 2002. I was my first exit, and it was gut wrenching, right? Just leaving people behind and leaving the business behind. That was a tough lesson. I was 30 at the time. It was a tough lesson to learn that selling a business can be emotionally straining, and a lot of people don't know that. It's just you're gonna get dollars in your bank account, you're gonna be happy, and it takes an emotional toll because it's your baby, right? I mean, you have a lot of blood, sweat, and tears poured into that.
So much of our identity is tied up in that business that we help build. The other thing I think that I'd love to highlight here is that you had the experience, you had the benefit of working for your family business for all those years. You also had the experience of having your grandfather help you get financial backing, which is something that maybe a lot of entrepreneurs don't have. But that doesn't take away from your story, because it's going to be hard, even if you have some financial backing. What I'm trying to say is that a lot of people give this excuse that, I don't have a rich uncle, or I don't have a way. And that's such a fallacy.
Well, he didn't give me the money. He loaned me the money with terms, right? So it wasn't as easy as, hey, and then $100,000 to start the business. It was just, all right, well, you're gonna have to pay it back, and this is how you're gonna pay it back, and this is how you're gonna do it. And sometimes I couldn't make the quota, right? So then he would put interest over interest, and I ended up paying like 4 or 5 times as much as he had loaned me, right? And he kept like 60% of the business for himself.
How much?
He had 60% of the business with the loan, and I had to pay it back. So at the end of the day, when we sold the business, I didn't make that much money.
It's a first of all, kudos to him, because I think if he had just handed you the money, it probably would not have been as good a lesson for you in your development, right? And also, just to reiterate, like, yes, you did have, at the very least, you had access to money that maybe other people wouldn't, even if the terms were steep. And it sounds like he made them very steep.
They were very steep.
But I don't want.
They were very steep, and I was very stupid, right? I mean, I was 21, and I thought, hey, my he's on my side, right? And not the case. He needs to tell me, hey, I'm your granddad, and I love you. I mean, it's a grandson, you're great, but this is business, and there's different laws for business, right?
So you sell that business. He gets 60% of the upside plus his loan back. So you're now not wealthy, but you now are feeling sad. You've kind of built something. You've let it go. What do you do next?
Well, that's where I break my promise, and then I go into the family business. By that time, I was recently married, and my first daughter was about to be born. And again, my grandfather and my father, they came up to me and they just said, you've had a great training with this small business that you created. My business, when I sold it, we were revenuing about around $5 million. So it was a nice business, but the family business was huge. It was a $40 million business at the time. And they said, now we need you to come and play in the big leagues. They put money on the table, and they said, you have to be responsible, and now you have to come work for us. My grandfather's name, my grandfather was Francisco, my dad was Francisco, and I'm Francisco, so it was just like family legacy coming over, right? I couldn't say no. They made an offer that I couldn't turn down. So I had to go into the family business, which I said I was never going to do. That was another great lesson for me, because it was a huge business. I mean, we had over 3,000 employees, no culture. Culture sucked. No budget. Everything ran towards my father's desk. If he thought it was a great idea, then he would do it. If he didn't think it was a great idea, he wouldn't do it. Again, a Gen Xer being a Gen Xer, right? We didn't have a website. And this was back in 2002. It was already a time when the internet was becoming part of the everyday business thing, right? I had 6 aunts and uncles that were also stockholders, and 18 cousins, ranging from 10 years older than I was to newborns, right? So I had to manage not only the business, I had to manage all the family dynamics that I had to do with the business. And it was probably one of the toughest things I've ever had to do. Not the business. I mean, the business was tough.
The family dynamics on top of the business is
family dynamics are just crazy, right? So I remember we set up. I had to set up a family office, which didn't exist. We set up a family council, and then we set up a professional board of directors. We didn't have it. So our board used to be the family, but the family, not everybody in the family knew about the business.
Right.
So it was board meetings were more of how much money are you going to give me, and less of well, this is what I'm thinking. How do we steer this? Right. Not everybody was happy that I had become the GM of the company. My younger brother and my older cousin both quit the same day that I stepped in, right? And I had to convince them to stay on, because that was part of my contract. So it was a tough time. It was fun. I mean, I would say it was professionally challenging and emotionally challenging as well with the family stuff.
Well, it sounds like this also came right at the start of your own nuclear family, right? It came at your daughter was on her way. So now, you and your wife and you want to have your own identity, your own family, you know what I mean? And you're having to manage all of the expectations and all of that from the extended family. And that feels like it would be hard as well. It's the end of the day. Do I go home and spend time with my wife, or do I go and talk to my aunt who's mad because X, Y, or Z?
Yeah, no. And one of the reasons that I took the job was because the other thing that was happening in my life was my mom passed, right? And my dad was just an emotional wreck. So part of the reasons that he was able to convince me was, listen, I'm in no state of mind to be running anything. So it's either past, it's either you come in, or this thing is going to hell, right? So it was a very emotionally charged time for me. My daughter was a newborn. My family was just, I was 2 years, had been married for 2 years, had a newborn. So still like a newlywed stage, right? And then my dad loses his best friend, his companion for throughout all life. I lose my mom. It was just chaotic. It was chaos. It was
So
tough time.
how long were you there? How long did you run that company?
I ran the company for 4 years, and then I sold it. So I sold it to this competing company from Costa Rica. And that was also a very, very good lesson. I mean, it's not the same when you negotiate like a $5 million business than when you negotiate a business of that magnitude, right? And we did really, really well. It was a very valuable lesson as to
Was there
businesses.
was there a controversy in the family as to wanting to sell, not wanting to sell?
There was, yeah. A lot of people depend on the business, and they just wanted to keep the business going. My grandfather had passed by the time that the opportunity came. Passed in 2005. If he would have been alive, I would have not been able to sell it, because it was for him, and it was his baby, right? He had seen it grow since 1946, so there was no way he would have let me sell the business. For me, it was just dollars and cents, right? It just okay, how much can we get from it, and does it make financial sense? And actually, when we sold the businesses, when I learned that entrepreneurs have, well, my mind says that entrepreneurs create business to sell it. The idea of creating a business, the ultimate goal is to sell it, to exit it, and because that's when you create wealth.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're always going to be running the rat race, right? But once you sell it, and if you build it big enough and you sell it, then you create wealth, and you can do another business if you want, but you already have wealth to manage, and wealth creates more wealth. It's a lot easier to multiply wealth with wealth than it is to multiply wealth with business.
I think if you,
But you have to start at the right time.
I'm going to ask you about that in a second, but I think if you start with the mindset of I'm building something that I want to sell eventually, it completely professionalizes your relationship with your own company. You're not thinking about it as a job, right? A lot of people build a company and they end up building a job. And it's a very complicated job, or it's a very easy job. It could be, but what they go into it, especially smaller first startup family kind of businesses, they go into it with the income in mind, as opposed to the wealth creation, as opposed to the capital gains.
Or they start living up the business, right? So I know a lot of entrepreneurs that, they pay the college through the business account, or they pay school through the business account, or their car are paid by the business, and if you're doing that, you're never going to sell it, because business is always the business values.
There's no separation between you and the business.
There's no separation, right? There's no separation between you and the business. And once you want to try to sell it, it's going to be hard. I mean, you're going to have to figure out a way to come up with the right financials to show. But yeah, I've done 2 more exits after that one, and both businesses were built to sell, right? Yeah. So the opportunity came, and I already knew I was going to sell the business before I started the business. And then it's just getting the professional team to manage it, and just hitting the numbers, and then saying, okay, it's time to sell. So this is what it's worth. And so here you go.
A few questions, and maybe address them in any order you want. So when you sold the family business, had you build a home office, and was there a home office that survived, or did everybody just kind of get their exits and everybody went on their own way? And how did that change the family dynamic? Like, I'm imagining a family now for 3 generations who's kind of all been in the same family business together, and all of a sudden it's sold. So does that make the family dynamics better, worse? Does it change the way people show up at Christmas?
We did have a family office. We had set it up, the family office. So the family office took care of several things, right? It would take care of, obviously, any family gatherings. It would let everybody know, or remind everybody of important family dates that you would otherwise probably forget. It would also be the one handling the scholarship funds for the family, for like, universities and stuff like that, for the generations that were coming up. It would also have business loans for family members that wanted to become entrepreneurs. And it had a very small family investment.
Mm-hmm.
Not big. It was just set up so it would generate enough money to be able to do the grants and the
Mm-hmm.
scholarships and stuff like that.
So
So that was the way it was.
it was more of a trust than a family office, right? When I think of a family office, I think of you've got 50 million under management. You're managing it on behalf of a family, but you're making a lot of investments. What you're describing is more of a trust, where you said, okay, the assets from this sale, or did it do
Well,
both?
no, well, it was more of a family office, but we were managing 50 million. We were managing a lot less, and it was just set up towards sort of like trying to maintain a level playing field for the family.
Okay.
So what would happen is the family was big, right? So I had 18 cousins, and I had six aunts and uncles.
Mm-hmm.
Not every nucleus of the family had the same amount of wealth. Some of them had managed it better than others. Some had more participation in the business than others.
Mm-hmm.
So my grandfather had decided that 3 of the 6 needed more control for some reason. Nobody knows why. So not everybody worked in the business. So whoever worked in the business had nice juicy salaries, and whoever didn't work in the business would only live off, maybe dividends.
Yep.
Or stuff like that. So what would happen is that within the cousins, there was a lot of resentment, Well, why does Francisco get to drive a nice BMW and I have a Volkswagen? Well, I went off to college and this guy didn't. I had a job managing a company, and this guy worked at, call center. So what we were trying to do with the family office was try to maybe get those things a little bit out of the way. So we were giving an opportunity to a guy that even if he didn't go to college, why don't you start your own business? Start learning about this so that you don't resent the other guy that's managing the business. It was hard because we had started the family business at the family office. So it was hard because we were already in the nick of it. So we were already big when the family office was getting started. Right. So there was already a lot of things that we need to take care of. We started a family office, I think it was in 2004, after we went through a family business consulting, and we also started family values and the nine things for the family business. Those tenants that who can work in the family and who can work in the business, how the succession should work and stuff like that. Once we sold, the family office basically got disassembled because we didn't need to anymore. Everybody had money. Some of them had more than the other ones, but everybody got enough money to be able to live well. It became, each family's head decided how they were going to handle their own branch. At the beginning, it created a little bit of a separation that wasn't there before. But then again, some of the family members were just meeting with other family members just because the business was there. But then they didn't really like each other, right? So it was a forced relationship. Mm-hmm. So for me, it became a little bit sort of like freedom to choose who you spend time with and who you don't spend. Sadly, some relationships never got back on track, and then eventually some did, right? And I think blood always calls blood, right? So you might have a fight with your brother and your sister, but they're still your brother and your sister. And eventually something's going to happen that's going to call you back. It's a little different between cousins and aunts and uncles. It might be easier for you to step back and not be as involved. But El Salvador is a small country, so everybody sees each other frequently, whether they want to or not.
So the other 2 businesses that you went on to build and exit, I'm assuming that there's no family involved in those?
No family. Well, my brother was involved in one of them, but he knew what the strategy was, so we just followed suit.
What were
and then the other one?
What industry were they in? Or
one of them was a retail store for bedding and bedding supplies. Mm-hmm. So it was the bed specialty stores. Yeah. So we sold it to We sold it to the biggest van manufacturing of the country. And the other one was a consulting company.
So how do you pick, like, if you're saying, I think the lesson I learned was that you have to go into a business with the sale in mind. How do you decide what opportunity to go for? How do you like map it out for me? Like imagine like you're considering a potential next business. What would you
Well, it's tough because you never, I mean, you never know if you're going to be able to sell it, right? It's just, business is always business. It always has risk. And again, your business plan is always going to say that you're going to be profitable by year one. And most probably that's not going to happen. After I sold the consulting company, I figured that I didn't want to get into business that I didn't want to run, that I was not interested. So an opportunity came up to buy this software company that was, it was bankrupt. It had a lot of debt. So I just assumed that and took over the company. It had a lot of debt. So I don't know if it was the right move or not. I haven't been able to sell that one. It's profitable. It's nice. It's fun. I have fun in that business, which I didn't in most of the other ones.
Oh, interesting.
So this one I enjoy a lot more working on. I mean, it's sort of problems that we face and the space we're on. It's something that's very, very interesting to me.
Does that change your mind about whether if somebody came along with an offer to buy it?
No, I would still sell it, but I would miss it a lot more. I think but the other businesses were, well, my first business, I was young and it was just, I saw an opportunity and I think this can be done. The other business, I didn't think we were going to sell it. The family business, I didn't think we were going to sell it, but somebody came knocking on the door saying, "Hey, are you interested in selling it?" If somebody knocks on your door and you're profitable and asks you if you want to sell because he's willing to pay a lot more than if you're looking to, if you're coming out to sell, right?
Yeah, I remember when we were first talking and thinking about this episode, one of the things you said to me is, I think that one of the mistakes people make is they wait too long to sell. Like you should sell earlier. In listening to you kind of describe your journey now over the course of these 4 businesses, my question to you is, what do you do sooner now in order to prepare for that sale, right? You're saying people should sell. So for example, go ahead.
I let management take over a lot faster.
Okay.
I let managers do a lot more on their own than before. I used to be the ultimate micromanager. I wanted to see every decision before it was made. Now I share the books with people a lot more, and I make them responsible. It's a lot easier to sell that way because if you have managers that know their stuff, you're less less liable for the company, less important in the company. Right. It's a lot easier to sell. Entrepreneurs, at least I never wanted to keep working on the business if the business was not mine. And that's one of the first things that happens in the negotiation, right? They say, well, how long are you going to stay managing the business? And then the minute I get my check, I'm out. So the buyer doesn't like that unless the business is stable without.
Correct. Yeah.
So if you're a very important part of the decision-making process of the business, they're not going to let you go. And then you don't want to be a slave for 5 years working on a business that's no longer yours.
So in books like Greg Crabtree's Simple Numbers or in other places, they point out this spot where you're actually erecting middle management in the business, right? So in the beginning, you kind of go and you do your thing. And then at some point you realize you need managers. And then somewhere between 3 and 5 million, in order to grow any larger, you need to effectively put in a good management team. And that is where a lot of businesses make a lot of mistakes, and they can't it chews up a lot of their cash, and they can't successfully get a middle management team in place. What have you done? Like if you're giving management control sooner, how are you picking the right people? What is the minimum process that you're telling them to follow? Like how has that worked for you?
It's not easy. I've had as many misses as wins in that department. I know, for example, in our software business, we hired this guy for operations a couple of years ago, and it just destroyed all our processes. It was just a bad hire, and he had the right curriculum, and just not the right fit for us, and not the right.
It's hard. Culture. It's hard because they come in, and if they do damage, they do damage. It's not like just we paid them a salary and we lost the money on the salary. It's all the other resources you deploy around them.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard. but it's a risk you have to take. I mean, I go with my gut a lot. I like smart people. I do a lot of in my interviews. I do a lot of uh, testing about how smart they are and how much rapport they might have with me. Smart people tend to have a way of figuring things out. Not always, but they tend to have a way of figuring things out. But yeah, it's hard. I don't have a magic formula.
Do you, for example, fire easily? Like once you figure out somebody's not the right person, or
I do. Yeah, I fire fast. If things are not working, if I don't, if I come to the office and there's one guy that I don't really want to talk to, I just let them go. I just said, this is not gonna work out. Even if I see someone that's not on my direct, that directly reports to me, that I think is not a right fit for any reason, I call the manager and say, listen, hey, you gotta get rid of this guy. This guy's it's not up to our standards.
Well, I wonder if tying the gut back to the art is interesting here, right? Because you're saying if I don't want to talk to them, you're effectively replying that there's a gut connection that you just kind of have. Like you either know that this person's, a team player and kind of there to give and get and kind of be part of the team, or you just kind of get, this person just rubs me the wrong way. So your gut's really telling you that this is the wrong person. Has that heightened or dulled because ever since you've kind of taken to the studio to let your intuition do more of the
No, I think it's heightened over time, just because the older you get, the wiser you get.
You trust yourself more.
And you trust you trust yourself more, and you trust everything is gonna be okay, right? Because when you have a manager in like a very high position, letting go is hard. It's hurtful. I mean, someone has to pick up the slack. Someone has to do the job. Someone has to go and meet with the clients and tell them what's going on. It's not an easy thing. It's not an easy transition. Even worse if you don't have someone to take over, right? Yeah. Which is usually the case. But with time, you learn that, it's going to be a hard pill to swallow, but the faster you swallow it, the better off you're going to be. I think when I was younger, I used to wait because I just wanted things to be perfect. Like, again, going back to the engineering logic and processes. Well, I don't have anybody else, so I might as well stick it out with this guy or this girl. And that just created more havoc and more chaos and more damage than just, pulling the Band-Aid out and ripping it out and saying, well, we're going to have to figure this out.
Yeah. I mean, I think it all boils down to different kinds of debt. And when you don't do something like let go of somebody who's not the right ultimate player or something like that, you accumulate interest as you keep them on. And when you finally do let them go, it ends up costing more than it would in the beginning.
Yeah. You also have to have people that you trust around you, right? That are also good sounding boards. Like your form could be a good sounding board, but even within the company, there's people that that they're vested, and that they know, and they're going to be the ones that are also going to be having your back. There's another thing that I'm doing now that I didn't do before, and it's if you get the right guy or the right girl, give him ownership. Give him some stock. Give him some part of the company. Let them either buy it or earn it. But if it's the right person, you have to make them part of it. And let them reap the benefits of when the sale happens too, right?
Getting that number right is important too, because how much ownership? Because as entrepreneurs, a fallacy I see a lot in startups is they're like, there's 3 of us, so we're going to split it a third, and a third. And it's like, well, is that the right way? Or is it just your desire to be fair? And sometimes we mistake equal for fair. And so we think that everybody's motivated like us by equity. And we don't give into account that some people are maybe more motivated by security, more motivated by a steady paycheck, more motivated by clear direction rather than kind of dealing with all the pivots. And for them, the equity number may actually need to be a lot smaller. It should be meaningful if you win, you know what I mean? But it does not need to be an equal share in the company.
I have 2 people right now that I know that I need to make part of the reward once we sell, right? So first of all, don't do it if the business is not stable. So if you're gonna get stock equity or any sort of equity to management, to upper management, and then you're gonna need cash, and you're gonna need a cash infusion, that they're not gonna they're not going to understand it, and they're probably not going to be able to face it, and they're going to get diluted. And so what you were trying to do is actually going to work against
And be counterproductive. Yeah.
It'd be counterproductive. So give them stock, give them equity once the business is already producing dividends year after year, right? It's not only you're an owner, you're also getting money out of it, right?
Mhm.
So it's a price, and the more it grows, the better it is for you. And then the other thing is don't give it away for free. So what I do is I said, listen, what I did was when we placed the equity option on the table, the value of the stock was frozen for them. And I said, listen, you're able to buy up to 5% of the company at this value at any time in your lifetime in the business. So let's say that the value of the stock was, I don't know, $1,000 per share, right? And they could buy up to 50,000 shares. And that would give them 5%. So it was a $50,000 investment. But probably they didn't have $50,000 cash at the time. They could do that anytime, and whenever they want throughout their lifetime, but it's capped at 50,000.
Yeah.
And it's capped at 5%. So now the value of the stock is worth, $10,000 a share. They're still able to buy it at that price. And it just becomes a matter of when they want to become part of the company and when they don't want to become part
You
of it.
give them an option, basically.
You give them an option. And then you might tell them, listen, there's also another stock option for how many years you've been working in the company. And then you might give them 1 or 2% more just for being in the longevity part of the company. And so they might end up with 6 instead of 5 or something like that. But then when they become owners, it becomes a lot easier when you're talking about budgets and budget cuts and going forward, and also giving them more responsibility over the whole thing. So, everybody's worried about sales. Everybody's worried about the bottom line. Everybody's worried about spending, and everybody's worried about, and it doesn't have to be something that only you are doing, and they're just doing their own little,
Yeah. I think
little cubby hole.
One of the mistakes I see with like inserting middle management is, a lot of times whoever's the head of marketing is only worried about marketing, and whoever's the head of, delivery is only concerned with delivery. And it's really, we all have to be owners of all the problems. And, and that's something that equity in the big picture incentivizes, is for everybody to care about what everybody else is doing and to help them, and to make it a team as opposed to individual. Everybody is an individual contributor. It's like, no, we're actively all. Do you have any of your artwork on your iPad? I know that when I saw you talk at GSA, you showed us these images, and you told us the story about how you created them. You talked about putting on boxing gloves, which is something that you did in your youth. And so I thought maybe you could show us some of your artwork.
This is I did this as a tribute to Roy Lichtenstein. He painted in the 60s, came up with this comic book series, and what he was trying to do, he was trying to show that he could create by hand something that was done by machines, which is comics, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is for it to be seamless. So you look at it and it looks more of like a print rather than a painting. So this is all acrylic painting over canvas. And what he did, if you remember Lichtenstein's paintings, he was depicting women as they were being depicted in the 1960s. So they were always crying. They were always waiting for the guy. There was always, waiting for him to call, or it was a very subdued position. So what I changed in my tribute was I painted women. These are normal women that have a superhero in them. So it's why they have the Wonder Woman crown, but it's actually a regular woman eating sushi. And it has a powerful quote on it instead of it being a submissive quote. So I think I did 21 artworks of this. I had a showing, and I think I have like 2 or 3 left from the showing. But yeah, you can see the on the background, you can see my studio. See, so that's the painting hanging on. Yeah. So there's the canvas hanging on into the studio.
And is this someone you know? Is this a when you say regular women, is it a specific woman or is it a hypothetical woman?
So it's a hypothetical. It's inspired in someone. So this one, for example, that one it was actually commissioned by this friend of mine that she loves sushi.
Mm-hmm.
She wanted a space in her wall, and she's a little oriental looking. So I tried to make her eyes a little bit more slanted than most of the other ones. She has long black hair. So most of her features are kept, while trying to make it a comic without it being a comic of her.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
This is amazing that this is all hand painted. I mean, I surely would have thought that this was computer or machine generated. This is amazing.
No, that's all hand painted. So yeah, that's again, that's me in front of one of the paintings, and that's in the middle of my studio, all hand painted. This one's she's smoking. I changed the quote on that one at the end.
Oh yeah.
But the quote is different on the finished product. I mean, I had finished it here, and I had to repaint it and change the quote because I didn't like it. My wife is my quality control, and she said there's something off with the quote in this one.
What did the quote become? Do you remember?
Oh, I don't. I think it's bother me at your own risk or something like that. She's looking like mean, right? She's looking like she needs some time off. So it's like, approach at your own risk or something like that.
Interesting.
I don't remember the exact quote. So this is, if you see that one, that one, yeah, click on that one. That is actually another version of the same superhero motif, but this one, it's how we see women in black and white visually. Because in everyday life, we forget how special they are. And they're actually superheroes, and they had a powerful quote on the back. Again, this is all hand painted, and you can see me ripping it up because I painted the woman first, and then I painted the background, and I did the lettering. So yeah, this is a series before the other one the full comic one.
Did you go back and paint some of this hair over the background because that hair, the way it goes over the background? Did you do that?
You do a little bit of last minute editing and getting
That's
a little
beautiful.
curls.
That's gorgeous.
Again, thank you. Yeah. And then
I'm looking for one of the older ones with
those, for example, those are the ones I used to do with the boxing gloves. So I used to strap on boxing gloves and punch the canvas, and that would create the hair, and then I would paint the woman on top of it.
So these are all punching. So this must be a very large canvas for that.
It's about
basically,
probably like 15 inches by 50 inches, something like that.
Yeah. Which other ones would you like to show us?
Well, this one, the one you're going through right now, is actually one of my most successful series. No, that's my daughter.
Which one?
If you go down a little bit,
yeah,
that one, for example, or the afternoon one, that one. This one, it's actually two canvases. One of them is in the background, the other one's ripped. The front canvas is ripped. So there's an image of a woman, and the back canvas has the superhero popping out. So this is actually one of my most successful series. It's the one that is sold all over the world.
That's very cool.
It's actually, it is cool, but it takes a long time to do. It took me a while to get this technique down. And you can see my studio is all painted because when I used to box with the canvas, paint would just go all over the place. And I'm a messy painter, as you can tell from my from my uniform there. I mean, I get paint all over. So yeah, I'm glad I have my space there because otherwise, my wife wouldn't let me paint anywhere else in the house. When I started painting in the bathroom, and things just went all over the place.
Oh, wow.
It was just a mess. You can see how I do it first in my iPad. So in that picture right there, you can tell I'm drawing from my iPad back to the canvas. So it's all hand drawn. from my design of the iPad first, and then I hand draw it into the canvas, and then I start the process.
So you originally designed that on the iPad, and then
On the iPad, yeah.
Okay.
And then I draw it with a pencil on the canvas, and then I just, start the painting process.
That's very cool. So for folks who are listening, this is if you want to see what we're looking at, it's on YouTube, where the video version of this episode is. And this is another one with the ripped canvas.
Yeah, the ripped canvas. Again, that's one of the I've done. I don't know how many of those paints I ended up doing, but it was a lot of them. I mean, they went all over the world. That painting actually went to Greece.
Which one?
Remember that one, the Catwoman one that you had right there. That one, yeah. That's the process of how it went. See, so it's covered and then the roof comes out.
That's amazing. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Francisco, and you said that the proceeds from your art, here's one.
Yeah, that's that one I did for cancer awareness in El Salvador. So it's imitating a magazine cover. It's all about it had to be pink, so it's all about beating cancer and stuff like that. That was a unique piece.
Very cool. All your artwork is amazing. You said some of the proceeds or all of the proceeds go to
some of the proceeds go to this organization in El Salvador called Colectiva Feminista, and what they do is they give emotional, psychological support to women that are trying to leave abusive relationships. So they ask us for either products that they need for the women, or we pay some of the bills that they have. Yeah, so it's usually around 20% of what we collect. The rest goes to paints and stuff. I mean, we don't make that much money from the artwork, but it's promoting a cause.
That's amazing. That's very it's very heartwarming to see.
No, I mean we've helped over 1,000 women that was directly just from the art. So it's very humbling, and when you get the letters from these women, it's
a talent that you pushed down because you thought was unuseful was the one that's helping you change the world. I love that, Francisco. Thank you. Thank you so much for being a guest today. Thank you for spending time with us, for sharing your story. And I wish you all the luck. People can find you on Instagram. Tell us the @ tag one more time, please.
It's at TTPRADO.art.
Fantastic. And is there any other way that people can reach out if they want to know more about your art or something like that?
Well, they can shoot me an email, or they can WhatsApp me, or do whatever they want.
Sounds good. Sounds like Instagram is the way.
Instagram is the best way. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Francisco.
Stavros, thank you very much for your time. I really enjoyed this.
Oh, I'm glad. So did I. Bye-bye, everybody.
Right. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Wednesdays Off. If this conversation resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear it. And if you're interested in building a life and business with more freedom, intention, and community, visit routinerebel.com to learn more. Until next time, keep challenging the status quo and keep building your version of Wednesdays Off.